A very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Royal Aeronautical Society Heathrow branch webinar. My name is William Lee. I'm the Honorary Secretary of the branch and the moderator for today's session. Joining me today is Holly Greig from the UK Department for Transport and Jonathan Council, the President of the Royal Aeronautical Society Heathrow branch and the Group Head of Sustainability of the International Airlines Group. Jonathan will be hosting today's webinar. So before I hand over to Jonathan, there are a few housekeeping points that I would like to clear out of the way. So first of all, please feel free to share your thoughts about today's event on social media channels such as LinkedIn or Twitter by @RAeSLHR using the hashtag RAeSLHR events and interact with us. Secondly, if you require a CPD certificate of attendance for your initial or continuing professional development records, please use the Q&A panel now to inform us your name. We will email this to you post-event. Your microphone is on mute, but throughout the webinar, we do encourage you to use the Q&A panel to raise any questions that you may have. You can also interact with us by clicking the thumbs up or like button next to each question that is being published. Finally, I would like to make you aware that today's event is being recorded and will be made available via our podcast and YouTube channel post-event. So without further ado, let me hand over the floor to Jonathan.
Thank you, William, and good afternoon, everybody. And well, the good news is that we're able to fly again. So as you'll see, I'm in Greece at the moment, not very sunny, I'm afraid, a bit raining, and William is actually in Venice. So truly international event, and so good news that we can fly. But yeah, it gives me great pleasure to introduce and welcome Holly Greig to this event and talk about this very important upcoming international summit, COP26. So I'll just say a few words about COP26 and then give some background about Holly, and then we'll get into Holly's presentation. So COP26, so it's the 26th United Nations Climate Change Conference. And it provides a unique opportunity to increase the ambition and pace of global action on decarbonisation. Now, the COPs, obviously they run every year, but every 5th year is a really important event. And this COP26 is actually on that 5-year cycle. So this is the most important COP since COP21, which is in Paris back in 2015. And it's also a critical milestone in the lead up to the 41st ICAO General Assembly in autumn of 2022, which, if you like, is it's the airline aviation industry's version of its own COP, where what we're hoping, following the historic announcement from IATA just a couple of weeks ago, their commitment to net zero emissions by 2050, we believe there is a really unique opportunity for aviation to be the first global industry to also commit to a net zero emissions by 2050. So we hope to use the COP to galvanise industry, state, civil society to support for this international action, to enable us to reduce the climate impacts of aviation. And in this seminar, Holly, Deputy Director of Aviation Decarbonisation at the UK Department of Transport, will outline the government's plans for the COP that will help us support this ambition. So just a few words about Holly's background. So she was appointed Deputy Director for Aviation Decarbonisation at the UK Department of Transport in June 2020. She joined the department originally in January 2015 as Head of Climate Change Strategy, working on the department's overall business response to reducing emissions from transport. Holly was then appointed Head of Office for the Minister of Aviation in August 2016, before being appointed Deputy Principal Private Secretary to the Transport Secretary in February 2018. So you can see that Holly is very well qualified to talk about this important subject. So with that, it gives me a great pleasure to welcome Holly Greig. So Holly, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and thank you, William. I should say to colleagues here that my Wi-Fi has been a little bit tricky this morning, and I'm hoping that you can all hear me. So yeah, thank you very much for the introduction, Jonathan, and for having me today. I feel like I don't need to introduce myself now because Jonathan's done such a fantastic job. I hope I'm as well qualified as Jonathan has suggested to make this presentation. I will do the best I possibly can to answer any questions, and we can get going. Great. So as Jonathan said, I'm here to give a bit of an overview about COP26 and the UK presidency, but with a particular focus on our work in respect of aviation at COP26. So just a quick run through of the session there, and then of course there will be time for Q&A at the end. As Jonathan has already said, the UK will be holding the presidency COP26 this year. The event will take place between the 1st and the 12th of November 2021 in Glasgow, and it will be the 26th conference of the parties, as the name suggests. And it will be the biggest international summit the UK has hosted, with over 30,000 delegates. So not only is it sort of a huge logistical challenge for the UK, but it's also an incredibly important event globally for our sort of, I guess, fight against climate change, for want of a better word. So attendees will be heads of state, climate experts, industry, campaigners, members of the public, and probably a number of other people that I haven't mentioned there. But as I said, up to 30,000 delegates, so a significant event. The UNFCCC have set out their key goals for COP26, which I've listed there, and I won't read out because I'm sure colleagues here are more than capable of reading it for themselves. But the main thing to flag here is that it's about bringing states together and bringing countries together to work together to agree the action that we are going to take in respect of the Paris Agreement. So as Jonathan says, the Paris Agreement was December 2015, and its goal was to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees, preferably to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. So the Conference of the Parties, the UK will try and agree a sort of a comprehensive and ambitious plan that agrees coordinated action to deliver upon the Paris Agreement. And the 4 priority campaigns for the UK presidency I've listed there. They're coal, cars, trees and finance. So these are the 4 big areas that the UK presidency has identified that we want to focus on and make progress on in respect of this particular COP. You'll notice there that aviation isn't mentioned, so we'll come back to that, but that should be no reflection of how important it is for us as the Department for Transport, and I'm sure everyone here. So I thought I'd just touch very briefly on the COP26 venue. People may already be aware of this, but I thought it was just worth mentioning it. So there's 2 zones as part of the COP26 venue. There is both the blue zone and the green zone, which are shown here on the map. The blue zone is managed by the UNFCCC Secretariat, the UK presidency and the parties. And this is really where all the sort of accredited attendees will be spending most of their time. It's where the negotiations will take place. It will be where the UK pavilion is located, and all of the UK government organised events will be taking place in this zone. We then have the green zone, which is no less important. So that's sort of over the other side of the river. That's also managed by the UK government as the host country. And this is a larger space that will be for non-accredited stakeholders. General public can come along, youth groups, civil society, academia, businesses, campaigners. And that will be the opportunity where, outside of the formal negotiations process, where there'll be an opportunity to kind of showcase, discuss, demonstrate, and really, I suppose, get into the sort of nitty-gritty of what's required from the whole of civil society when it comes to addressing climate change. So there's two parts of this sort of the COP26 venue. So the UK has announced its COP26 programme. And it's going to be covering the sort of the key areas that I've really just touched on, both from a UNFCCC point of view, but also from a UK presidency point of view. And the days are sort of set out. So we've got dedicated days in respect of the different priorities. So the first part of the week is the World Leaders Summit, and then we will have individual days as set out here, which will focus on each part of our climate ambition and goals. And that really allows, I think, for there to be a real focused message, focused activity in respect of each one of those big areas on each different day. And you'll see here that Transport Day is on Wednesday, the 10th of November, and that will be where all of the activity really focused in respect of transport will be taking place. So that's aviation, but I suppose arguably our big sort of priority campaign that relates to transport is in respect of cars and zero emission vehicles. So it will be heavily focused on that, but there will also be campaigns in respect of aviation and maritime on that day, which I will come to. I won't come to the maritime stuff, I should say, but I will be talking in detail about the aviation content. So as I probably touched on most of this actually. So the overarching objective for Transport Day is to drive the global transition to zero emission transport. And as I've said, the priority for this day will be in respect of zero emission road transport, where the UK is of the view that we've reached a tipping point, and this will be the opportunity to kickstart the mass market for zero emission vehicles. But it's also a unique opportunity to drive forward progress in respect to some of those harder to abate sectors, such as aviation and shipping. Now, particularly in respect of aviation, it's really important that we as the UK recognise that ICAO has responsibility for international aviation emissions. So really, in respect of COP26, this is our opportunity to galvanise momentum and support in advance of the ICAO Assembly in 2022, as Jonathan mentioned earlier. So what we're really trying to do at COP26 is kickstart a year of ambition, collaboration and momentum in advance of the ICAO 2022 Assembly. So again, I'm slightly ahead of myself in terms of my messaging, but as I say, it's a real unique opportunity for us, even though it's not a key part of the sort of negotiations, aviation, it's incredibly important for this government. Hopefully that will be that will strike a chord and is something that you will recognise in terms of the messaging from the Prime Minister and indeed from our Secretary of State and recent announcements in terms of the importance that we place on decarbonising the aviation sector. As I say, we really see this as a unique opportunity to bring together like-minded states who are serious about decarbonising the aviation sector. So as I've said, I've already talked about our overarching objectives, so I'll discuss our work streams, which we can split into three areas really. The first is our policy initiatives, so those new policy initiatives that we want to launch at COP26, which we think are vital for our efforts in respect of aviation decarbonisation. There is work that we are doing in respect of travel to COP26 to try and reduce the carbon footprint of the event, but also start to showcase the potential for low carbon fuels in aviation. And then finally, we are looking to showcase zero and low emission technologies and provide industry a platform to really show their support and the actions that they're taking in respect of COP26. So our two big policy initiatives there are the International Aviation Climate Ambition Coalition, which I will talk about in more detail momentarily, and then our work with the World Economic Forum and Clean Skies for Tomorrow on our SAF ambassadors' work. So our big priority campaign and what we would describe as our headline initiative on aviation for COP26 is our International Aviation Climate Ambition Coalition. So the UK's aim for the 2022 ICAO Assembly is to agree a long-term goal for international aviation that is consistent with the temperature goals of the Paris Agreement. I'm sure people here will be aware of the fact that we have our own UK targets in respect of decarbonisation. That's achieving net zero 2050, and aviation is included in those targets. So what we are really keen to ensure we achieve at the ICAO 2022 Assembly is a global agreement in respect of aviation that is consistent with that target. Now, of course, it's not entirely up to the UK. We will be going there and negotiating with 197 other states who are participants of ICAO. But for us, that is where the UK is. What we want to do is use COP26 to show how much global state support there is for an ambitious long-term goal already a year in advance of the Assembly. So what we're working to do now, and we are very much in active discussions and active negotiations as we speak, is bring together a broad and diverse coalition of states to be launched during COP26 by a declaration. And the coalition and the declaration will show support for ICAO adopting a 1.5 degree consistent long-term goal at the 41st Assembly. We plan to launch the coalition in the Blue Zone on Transport Day, and we plan to bring together those states who have agreed to take part in the coalition to hold a launch event, to sign the declaration, and as I say, kickstart a year of collaboration and a year of ambition in advance of the ICAO Assembly. It's worth saying now that, this is, as I say, the start of those discussions. So we hope to bring together as broad and diverse a coalition of states as we can at COP26, but this is the start of that coalition. So we will hope to be able to bring on more states between now and the Assembly to really show just how much support there is in advance of that event. And then our second policy initiative, as I say, we've been working really closely with the World Economic Forum and a small group of states to really do some intense work in respect of sustainable aviation fuels. So I'm sure everyone here will be in a, well, not sure actually, I guess we'll find out when we have the Q&A later. But certainly it's the government's view that sustainable aviation fuels have a critical part to play in the decarbonisation of aviation. And so we've been working, as I said, really closely with the World Economic Forum and a small group of states to I suppose, to gather what we call some SAF ambassadors and work with them to develop a sustainable aviation fuel toolkit, which we will be launching at COP26 on Transport Day. And the toolkit contains a number of practical and innovative SAF policy proposals that can be implemented by states in all regions. So it's really intended to be a practical guide for states who want to drive forward SAF policy, to help them to consider a number of different issues, to put forward different policy proposals that they may want to consider in their states, to help really drive up the production and use of truly sustainable fuels for aviation. What we're hoping is that these SAF ambassadors, so who represent the states who have contributed to the toolkit, will further promote these policies in their own regions and lead by example by considering adopting them themselves where possible. So the toolkit is available to everyone. We are very keen for a broad group of states to take forward many of the policies contained within the toolkit, but it's specifically the ambassadors and those states who've participated that we very much hope will be leading the charge. And we'll be holding a launch event for the SAF Ambassadors Toolkit in the UK Pavilion on Transport Day. And then we have some wider initiatives. So it's worth saying probably that there are some space limitations at COP26 this year, largely because of obviously the social distancing requirements that we're all working within in respect of COVID-19. So we've had to try and be really creative when we're thinking about how we can showcase the UK industry, the UK technology and UK innovation. So we're delighted to be working with Sustainable Aviation to have a panel entitled Delivering Jet Zero, which will be largely an industry discussion held in the UK Pavilion on Transport Day. This will be an opportunity for industry to really talk about what they're doing, their priorities when it comes to decarbonising the aviation sector. So we'll be having that industry panel. And then in addition to that, we will be showcasing UK innovation and UK technology digitally throughout all of our events. So firstly at the Coalition launch event, secondly at the SAF Toolkit launch event, and finally at our Delivering Jet Zero panel. So we very much want to, I suppose we're all very much used to having to do things digitally over the past 18 months. And in many respects, COP26 won't be very different. So we've really got to do the best we possibly can to showcase UK technology and innovation digitally. I'll come to it at the end, but if your organisation would like to be involved, would like to have your technology or your innovations shown at COP26 through our digital montage, then please do contact me after the event, because there are still opportunities to be involved. And then finally, we've been working really closely as part of our Jet Zero Council SAF delivery group, and huge thanks to Jonathan for his work on this, with industry to ensure that there is a supply of sustainable aviation fuels at airports for COP26. So as I said earlier, it's really important for the UK to do everything we can to reduce the carbon footprint of COP26. We recognise that many delegations will have to fly, and so there's a real opportunity for the UK here to show the commercialisation opportunities for SAF. So as I say, we've been working with industry colleagues. We very much appreciate their support to make sure that there is a truly sustainable supply of sustainable aviation fuels. And we have been promoting that with delegations and VIPs who will be attending COP26, asking them to put in their orders of sustainable aviation fuels in advance of the conference, so we can make sure that supply is there for them for their outgoing flights. And we're also very much encouraging those states and delegations to ensure that they use sustainable aviation fuels in their incoming flights as well. So a very brief summary there then for aviation at COP26. As I've said earlier, it's not one of those big priority campaigns for government, but that certainly doesn't mean it isn't a priority for the Department for Transport and indeed for our Secretary of State. And we're trying to really showcase aviation and what we're doing in the UK, but also our ambitions globally at this conference. And we really believe it's a really good opportunity, as I said, to hopefully align our ambitions as much as possible ahead of the ICAO conference. So the key things we're doing, as I've said, we've got Transport Day on Wednesday, the 10th of November. So that will be really the day where we focus all of our aviation activity, whether that's digitally, whether that's online, whether that's sort of on the ground at COP26. So please do, keep your eyes peeled on that day. As I've said, on that day, we will be launching our International Aviation Climate Ambition Coalition. We will be launching our SAF Ambassadors Toolkit. We will be promoting the work that we've done in respect of supplying SAF for delegates, and we will be working with Sustainable Aviation on our Delivering Jet Zero industry panel discussion. I didn't mention it earlier, but it was on the slides that Rolls-Royce will be exhibiting their electric aircraft in the green zone, there will be opportunities for members of the public to go and view that and really engage with the technical innovations that are happening in respect of aviation. And then finally, as I said, we'll be using digital content as much as we possibly can to really showcase what the UK is doing in respect of innovation and technology. I say UK, but of course we really want to show what's happening internationally as well. We've got some great examples from our international counterparts on what they're doing. So again, as I said, we're very much open to offers about what we can showcase on the day. How to get involved. So I've mentioned earlier that we're very much tight in terms of attendance at COP26, particularly in the blue zone, largely because of social distancing requirements. So where we are really is that we're inviting those people who have been invited to speak. The government can accredit, and there are a number of other organisations and pathways through which you can get accredited to enter the blue zone. If you're not accredited to enter the blue zone, then the other two opportunities are listed here. So our main ask for businesses is to set out your own ambitious net zero targets between now and COP26 and join the Race to Zero if you haven't already joined it. Race to Zero is a really great opportunity to really show your commitment as a business to a clean future. And it's worth saying that the UK presidency will be asking only those participants who are part of Race to Zero to take the stage at UK events at COP26. So committing to Race to Zero is really the best way to show your commitment to decarbonising the aviation sector, I should say. And then separate to that, we know that many businesses are doing a number of pre-COP26 events, which we're really keen for our ministers, us as a department, to be involved in, to amplify and to work with you to really make the best of them. So if you are planning an event in advance of COP26 and you would like DFT ministers to be involved, either be there or tweet or amplify or sort of support it, then again, please do let me know, and we're really happy to work with you to really make the best of that event. And we're also using those opportunities to capture some of our digital content that we'll be displaying on the day. So I hope that was pretty much the amount of time I was expected to take. And over to you, Jonathan. Very happy to take any questions on any of that.
Thank you very much, Holly. And that's a great overview of what we can expect from COP26. I'm minded to think about the way that COP15 in Paris in 2015 really helped us get the agreement for CORSIA at the 39th ICAO General Assembly back in 2016. So that COP was really a springboard to enable us to get the agreement for CORSIA the following. So I see almost a direct parallel here in that COP26 can help us at next year's General Assembly. So it is, I guess it's very fortuitous that they are planned in that kind of cycle. So yeah, very exciting. And I think all the initiatives that you've mentioned there are very exciting, particularly the International Aviation Climate Ambition Coalition, I think can do a great deal to help with that ambition at next year's General Assembly. And yeah, you mentioned the Race to Zero. IAG, we're very, very happy and supportive of the Race to Zero, and we are a member. And I have to say, it is a great campaign to help again build momentum. I think they've got several hundred companies now signed up to this scheme globally. So it really is a good scheme. So I'd encourage other organisations to take a look at it and sign up where they can. So we have the questions have started to come in now. So basically what I'll do is maybe just ask a couple of those, and then let's get to them as they come through. So the first one, the one Julian Lahal has asked, will the green zone be open for the general public? Do we need to register in advance to enter this area?
do you need to register in advance to get access to the green zone? Yes, is the answer. And I have to say, I just saw Ellie Goulding last night on Twitter encouraging. Already done that. You can book your tickets now for the green zone as a member of the public. You do have to register in advance. I think there will be a limited number, noting the social distancing requirements. So yeah, you do have to register in advance. My understanding is that it is open to do so now.
Yep. Yep, thank you. So yeah, definitely encourage people, if you're thinking of going up to the COP, I'd plan sooner rather than later. The other challenge that we're picking up is accommodation. So obviously with 30,000 delegates in town, accommodation is pretty difficult at the moment. So I know I've heard of people staying as far afield as Edinburgh and even Carlisle now. So yeah, you want that so you might just want to go up for the day, or you may want to think about your accommodation options. So we have another question from Chris Pocock. What financial incentives have the DfT offered so far, such as tax breaks on investments and grants? So I guess this is for specifically low carbon activities that Chris is talking about there.
Thanks. So, I mean, so last year we had a 1-year spending review, which is always a little bit challenging in terms of kind of how much we were able to spend and the investments we're able to make. But hopefully you guys will have seen in the Prime Minister's 10-point plan that we announced 15 million for our Green Fuels, Green Skies competition, and we recently announced the shortlist for that competition. We're also investing £3 million into zero emission flight infrastructure. And again, we announced the winners of that competition. I think it was just last month, actually, only a few weeks ago. So we have that investment. And then alongside that, many colleagues here will, I'm sure, be familiar with the BAYS ATI funding, which provides research and development funding into aerospace technologies as well. So those are just sort of some of the things I would mention. I suppose the other thing I would mention is that we are right in the middle of a spending review as we speak. So colleagues will no doubt have seen that the Chancellor will be undertaking the spending review on the 27th of October. It's worth saying, being very clear, I'm sure it won't be a surprise to anyone that we are operating within a very tight fiscal envelope. However, of course, decarbonisation is a top priority for this government. So we are working with the Treasury around what additional spending might be available in respect of decarbonising the aviation sector. But of course, as I'm not the Chancellor, I'm not able to make any commitments on that now. But we do absolutely recognise that investment is very much needed, and hopefully colleagues here will have read our Jet Zero consultation, which we published in July, and that very much talks about the government's priorities and approach to the decarbonisation of aviation, and it very much talks about driving the uptake of new technologies to decarbonise the sector that will allow us to retain the benefits of flying whilst reducing emissions. And I'm very clear that in order to do that, we really do need to invest in the new different types of technologies that are going to be required to get us there. So I'll stop there for now, but happy to take any sort of follow-ups on that.
Great, thank you, Holly. Yeah, coming in thick and fast now, so I'll rattle through. So Chris Sergener has asked, I think he might be asking me as well, but maybe I'll put it to you first, Holly. Can you tell us which industry players will be at COP26 apart from Rolls-Royce? Or maybe if I could just, I certainly know, Chris, that obviously IAG and British Airways will be involved. And there's a whole bunch of events where I guess plans are still being finalised. But the events I know of where industry will be participating, there's the World Travel and Tourism Council event, which I think is on the 9th of November, Coalition for Negative Emissions, which I think is on the 11th, Airlines for Europe, which is on the 11th, obviously all the events that Holly has talked about, mainly on the 10th, and then I think ATAG, the IR to ATAG event is on November the 4th, and there will be industry representation at pretty much all of those. Holly, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add on that.
No, thanks, Jonathan. That's really helpful. I think that pretty much covers it. I should just say as a reminder that there was a Cabinet Office expression of interest process at the beginning of this year, which was the opportunity for industry to put in bids to present and be involved and hold events at COP. So that process ran over the course of the summer, and industry colleagues who have been successful will have been made aware, one of which is Rolls-Royce, as I mentioned earlier. And we are in the process of just finalising our panel members and our industry representatives for each of the events that I've just talked about. I should say that is that is tight, it is very limited, not just because of social distancing, but actually because there's so much to pack into the day. So each of our events has to be a set period of time. So unfortunately, we can't have a huge panel for many of our events. So we're really trying to think creatively about making sure that we have good representation from industry and people who can speak either from a sort of a global industry perspective or can speak on some of our key priorities such as sustainable aviation fuels and zero emission flight. But I won't deny that it is challenging.
No, indeed, a lot to pack in a short space of time. In fact, we have a follow-up question from Chris Sergner as well. Can you talk a little bit more about who the SAF ambassadors will be and what is their role? So
I can't announce who they are at this time because they are representatives from states who've helped us with the SAF toolkit, and we will be announcing who those states are at Transport Day at COP26. But they are a small group of states who have real ambitions, and their ambitions are aligned with the UK in respect of delivering truly sustainable aviation fuels for the aviation sector. What their role is going to be, so over the summer, I said they've been working with us to develop the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Toolkit, and then going forward, we very much hope that they will be champions of implementing those policies contained in that toolkit and helping support other states to do the same. So our first initiative in respect of this work was to develop this toolkit. We need to continue to talk to these states about how we want to use these ambassadors going forward. And I would really welcome if colleagues have ideas about where they could help or gaps they could help to fill, please do let me know. So I said the first initiative has been this toolkit and really championing the toolkit and the policies within it. And I said hopefully implementing some of those policies in their states. Going forward, welcome ideas, frankly.
Great, thank you, Holly. And then we have a question from Stuart Green. Will taxation on Jet A1 be considered at COP as a means of subsidising development of SAFs?
I have to confess that I don't know what Jet A1 is. My apologies.
Jet fuel. Jet
fuel,
yeah.
Thank you. Okay, cool. So taxation is a matter for the Treasury, which is my standard government line. So my apologies for that, but I have to reel it out. You will have seen that the Treasury consulted earlier this year on changes to air passenger duty. So they were looking at making some changes both to the domestic bans for APD, but also to the international bans. So I hope colleagues here have the opportunity to respond to that consultation. I know that Treasury are considering those responses now and will be likely to announce the next steps shortly. So my apologies, I can't make any commitments in respect of tax. It is a matter for the Treasury. But as I say, please do read that consultation if you haven't looked at it already, and look out for the Treasury's response, which I think might be imminent. But again, don't want to speak on behalf of the Treasury.
No, thank you, Holly. And maybe I can just add a couple of comments around what's happening at the EU that we're reasonably close to. So there's consultations going on there as well. And certainly the EU ETS revenues. So again, I think the same issues with taxes and hypothecation. But I think to your question, Stuart, one of the things they're looking at there is the EU ETS auction revenues to be used to help development of low carbon technology, including sustainable aviation fuels. So we know that that is certainly being considered, but not direct taxation. Yeah, we have another question on is the International Aviation Climate Ambition Coalition to be formed of both states and industry?
Thanks. No, this is purely a state initiative. So it's purely about, so I mean, we really welcome the announcement from IATA, which set out industry's ambition in respect of this area, where we think the sort of, I won't say gap, but the kind of the next challenge is to show that there is just as much state ambition for a long-term aspirational goal at ICAO as there is from industry. So we're very much focusing this coalition on states, but as with everything, we would hugely welcome industry support, industry amplification. If you think you're in a position to lobby particular states who you think it would be important to join, then we would very much welcome that support. But yeah, it's very much focused on states and making sure that we really show just how much state support there is in advance of the Assembly next year.
All right, thank you. I have a question now on SAF policy. Will there be any regulations put in place for the UK to sell a certain percentage of SAF out of the total volume of jet fuel sold going forward?
So we consulted on a UK SAF mandate earlier this year. That consultation has now closed. but we are considering responses to that, and thank you very much to everyone who contributed. So the consultation set out sort of a number of different levels of the SAF mandate, I think up to 10% by 2030, and we welcomed industries and academics and NGOs' views on our proposals there. So we are considering it now. And again, we'll be looking to publish our response soon. So the answer I think is yes. Government is actively considering, as we speak, regulating for SAF to be mandated up to a certain percentage in the UK. It's probably also worth saying, just to kind of perhaps preempt some questions on this, that some of the feedback we've also received from industry and others as part of the consultation is that sort of a mandate alone perhaps isn't going to be enough to deliver, you know, a huge uptake of SAF in the UK. Some of the feedback we've been getting is that that might be counterproductive in the absence of a price support policy as well. So again, I'm not able to make any commitments here, but we've heard the responses from industry, and we are actively considering what might be possible.
All right, thank you. Question here about the ICAO General Assembly. So following on from the IATA announcement recently, what do you think are the prospects for an agreement at the ICAO General Assembly to a long-term climate change goal, and how can the COP help this?
Thanks, Jonathan. From my perspective, you know, it is a huge ambition for the UK to agree a long-term aspirational goal for aviation at the ICAO Assembly. And we know, working with a number of other states, that that is very much their ambition as well. But of course, as with anything, there are a number of states that we have to bring on board, and you know, there are a diverse range of views in respect of what is appropriate when it comes to aviation and long-term goals. So I would say that I'm optimistic, because you know, it's always, I think that's the sort of person that I am, really, and I really want us to achieve that outcome. How COP can help? So of course, I've said earlier that aviation emissions are the responsibility of ICAO, but what we believe that we can do at COP is really bring together like-minded states and just show how much ambition there is for achieving this long-term goal. And that's very much the purpose of our climate ambition coalition that I was talking about earlier. So it's really important for us to be clear that, you know, we understand that this is ICAO's responsibility. What we're trying to do is show just how much we support the ambition for a long-term aspiration goal, and how much we want to see that agreed at the ICAO Assembly.
Very good, thank you. We have a question here about hydrogen. So what do you think about Airbus's hydrogen airplanes 0E? Is it better to develop these planes or focus on SAF?
Thanks. Well, I think it's fantastic what we're seeing from Airbus. I would say there's no one silver bullet to decarbonise the aviation sector, so we need to be pulling all the levers and looking at all the different technologies that we can. So I absolutely support Airbus's work in respect of hydrogen, and that of others as well. I think generally speaking, you know, there's a view that, as I say, no one silver bullet, and hydrogen, you know, hydrogen technologies, while hugely promising, they're likely to take quite a long time to come into commercial use, particularly for those sort of larger aeroplanes. So from my perspective, and from the evidence and the analysis that I've seen, we need everything. So we need SAF, we need hydrogen, we need battery technology, we need to focus on creating efficiencies in our current aviation sector, so airspace modernisation, you know, actually really sweating that current system as much as we can. You know, you've talked earlier about Corsia, Jonathan, and indeed the UK ETS. It's going to take everything we've got, frankly, when it comes to decarbonising aviation. Many of these technologies are very early stage, so we're not in a position to pick a winner yet, or indeed rule any out. My view is that, yeah, we need to be exploring everything, and yeah, I very much support Airbus's work in respect of hydrogen, and indeed other companies as well, as much as I support those companies that are working on SAF as well. It's really exciting and encouraging.
Yes, no, totally agree. There's no silver bullet. We need all the technology and support we can muster to help achieve our targets. So yeah, totally agree. I have a question about ICAO. Do you know if ICAO will be attending the COP and taking part in events?
I very much hope they will. I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of ICAO, but I would say that we, as I said earlier, we absolutely recognise that ICAO has responsibility for international aviation emissions. We want to use this COP to really highlight what we're doing in respect of aviation. I think it would be really important, and we very much would welcome ICAO's attendance. As I said, I can't speak on their behalf, but it is certainly something that the UK would like to see.
Yes, indeed. Interesting one. Thank you. We have one on airships. Have airships, which largely meet 2050 targets, I guess because they're very low carbon, have airships been considered? I don't think this means in terms of getting to the COP, but I think in terms of meeting our targets.
Yes, we haven't considered them in terms of getting to the COP, just to square that one off. I have to say it's not a huge area of expertise for me, so I can't really comment, although I promised to take it away and Google it and think about it after this event. But Jonathan, if you want to comment on that, if you have more you'd like to add, I'd welcome it.
No, yeah, I think, I mean, our view is possibly for cargo, longer term for cargo. We don't think really for passenger, but simply because of the time it takes. But I know there's been some very good work undertaken, I believe, through Cranfield, looking at potential use where there is less importance of time. Certainly, I think there is potential opportunity for on some of those freight movements. So that I think that is a potential area. But nothing particularly soon. I think it's still a few years away. So we have, just again on the General Assembly. I guess one open question: what can industry do to support and increase the chances? What else could industry? I guess you've outlined some of the great areas that we can get involved in the COP, but what else is there? Anything else that industry can do to support and increase the chances of a successful outcome at the ICAO General Assembly next year?
Thanks. Well, I think the IATA announcement has been really key in the first instance. I think earlier I mentioned about signing up to Road to Zero, which is incredibly important, and thank you for your comments on that as well, Jonathan. Again, I think I've mentioned earlier, if you have key contacts in particular states, working and lobbying with those governments on their ambitions in respect of aviation decarbonisation, what their plans are for COP26, what their intentions are for the ICAO Assembly, would be helpful. I really just think in terms of, actually thinking about your own business and what more you can do in respect of decarbonising, in respect of working towards net zero. Very much recognise, the sort of financial pressures on the aviation industry recently. So I'm certainly not suggesting this is easy. But I think, as with everything when it comes to climate change and decarbonisation, it's really important for us to think as individuals about what we can do. I think that applies just as much to businesses as people. So I suppose the first thing I would say is sort of look inwards and think about what more your business can be doing, but then, think about outwardly how you can help, how you can lobby, how you can influence, what commitments you're able to sign up to, what actions and investment you're able to take. And as always, we're very keen to talk to stakeholders, work with them, amplify their positive announcements. So do let me know.
Great, and thank you, Holly. And we've got just a couple of questions now relating to SAF. The first one, implementing SAF globally. Is there any plan to regulate it worldwide through CAAs? So
I think this is something that would have to be done through ICAO. This will be a role for ICAO in terms of sort of global regulation in respect of aviation. That's very much their bag. We are working with ICAO in respect of sustainability standards for SAF, and I think that will always be the balance from our perspective as the UK. We very much want to see a significant uptake of sustainable aviation fuels, but we also want to make sure that those fuels are truly sustainable, and we would avoid any competition with food, with land, and with other sort of downsides that can come forward as a result of some kinds of SAF. So I think there will always be a balance, as I said, between striking significant uptake and it being truly sustainable. And of course, we know that many of those really truly sustainable fuels are very, very expensive and require a huge amount of clean electricity and various other feedstocks as well. So I think my answer is that would be a job for ICAO, and there will be a balance to be struck in respect of making sure that whatever is mandated is truly sustainable. Jonathan, I don't know if you want to comment on that. I know you're a real expert on SAF.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think one of the ambitions for the General Assembly next year is, as well as a long-term target, to raise some ambition on sustainable aviation fuels, and I totally agree that I mean there's lots of work going on, as you know, within the EU and the UK, but I think ICAO has a role to help incentivize and promote production of SAF globally, because we're all interested in making sure that not only can we pick up sustainable aviation fuels in our home bases, but also down route, particularly for our long haul flights. So yeah, no, totally agree. ICAO have a prominent role to play there. And there's just another question. So there's been much talk about achieving 10% SAF by 2030. So I think recent announcements by the World Economic Forum Clean Skies for Tomorrow ambition, and also the One World Global Alliance. And indeed, I believe the US airlines have recently committed to 15% by 2030, the 9 billion gallons announcement. So the question now, I guess, is do you think this could be achievable in the UK, and how can the COP help?
Well, I guess the first thing I would say is I wouldn't want to rule out anything when it comes to the decarbonisation of aviation, right? We've got to be ambitious. One of the things I always think about is, 20 years ago, I'm sure this is a bit of a cliche, but 20 years ago, we wouldn't have had the iPhones and the Android phones that we've got now. That would be impossible to predict. So I don't think I'm well placed to rule out any kind of technological development, frankly, and any level of ambition. So I think that would be the first thing I would say. As I said earlier, we've consulted on a SAF mandate in the UK up to 10%. We believe that is deliverable, hence why we consulted on it. But it's really important that we have the sort of entire wraparound system when it comes to SAF. So it's not as simple, as far as I understand it, of just mandating a certain percentage. So you have to make sure that it's truly sustainable. You have to think about the life cycle. You have to not only create a supply of SAF, but also a demand for it. And when I've talked about earlier about it being far more expensive than kerosene, at least for now, that is a real key consideration in respect of that. So really want to be hugely ambitious for SAF, particularly a UK industry, which can bring growth and jobs and wider benefits as well. But we need to think about the whole ecosystem and making sure that we are creating a truly sustainable, in the sort of, I guess, the broadest sense of the term, industry for SAF.
Yeah, totally agree. And there's just a follow-up question there. Is there a wish from governments to assess how we can distinguish SAF types? Some are yet very polluting, i.e. algae versus crop, have hugely different environmental impacts, which I think you've alluded to in terms of the sustainability criteria. But I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add there.
I probably wouldn't add very much more, I think, other than to say, yes, it is very much at the forefront of government's mind to ensure that the SAF that we use is truly sustainable. There's a whole load of different kinds. Different ones bring with them sort of different pros and cons, I suppose, in terms of sustainability, costs. Hopefully in the consultation we published in the summer, we got into some of that detail. But yeah, I think a lot more work to do and a lot to be done in terms of really bottoming out what the best approach.
Absolutely. Just a couple of final questions we've got here. No mention of reduction of ground service vehicle emissions. So I guess this is at airports, I guess we're thinking about here.
So again, I guess I would refer you to our Jet Zero consultation, where we talk very much about that. So we are very clear that it's about the kind of whole ecosystem when, and actually kind of we talk about a bunch of initiatives, for want of a better term, where we are talking about system efficiencies and how we can kind of really sweat the current system, and actually how much of those initiatives are things that we can do in the short term where we have the technologies available now. So in our consultation we talk about decarbonising airports, aircraft and airspace. And very much when it comes to airports, so we've consulted on an earlier target for airports of zero emission by 2040. Had lots of feedback from industry about the sort of complexities, pros and cons of that type of approach. But from my perspective, that's incredibly important for the aviation sector. As everyone here will probably know, the aviation sector is often held up as the sort of poster child for climate change and sort of, what's wrong with, with society in respect of climate change. I'm not saying I think that's fair. I'm just commenting on the media, and many of us will have seen the rhetoric around that. So therefore, I think it's incredibly important that the aviation sector does everything it can. We totally recognise that actually decarbonising, a transatlantic flight is incredibly challenging, but there are things that the industry can do now to really show how serious it is about sustainability. And I personally think that, road transport at airports, at airfields, is one of those things that we can act on in the shorter term, as well as I said in respect of airspace modernisation as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, totally agree. Thank you. Now, I think we have a question here that I guess relates to CORSIA. Will rules be agreed on credible and verifiable offsetting?
So again, I think that's one for ICAO. Certainly from a UK perspective, we're in the process of implementing CORSIA now. The UK is one of a number of states who've signed up to the voluntary phase of CORSIA. We're very much committed to the scheme. But yeah, I personally am very much interested in offsetting and actually doing more to kind of, I suppose, debunk some of the myths around it, but also address some of the problems. Personally, I've found since I've come into this job, I've been in the job 18 months, offsetting, how it works, the pros and cons of it, how we can make sure the offsets are truly sustainable, is something that I still don't feel I've quite been able to fully get my head around. And I want to do more about that, but I suppose my personal reflection is therefore that I can see why others might sort of struggle with it and question, is this credible? What does it mean? What's actually happening in practice? And so I suppose I would say that I think there's more to do on offsetting, and ICAO is going to be a key forum for doing that. Jonathan, I know you've had lots of experience in this, so yeah, would welcome your expertise.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. In the offset market, there are some good offsets, but there are some less good offsets. So we're absolutely clear that for aviation, we're only going to use, the fully sustainable offsets, which is why we support, a robust set of sustainability criteria through CORSIA, and we will work to make them even more stringent, and to ensure that the reputation of the global airline industry depends on the quality of those offsets, and ultimately that's down to those rules and conditions that have been established through CORSIA, which I have to say I think generally they're doing a very good job. In ICAO, they set up something called the Technical Advisory Board. And it is actually quite difficult to get qualified eligibility through CORSIA. So a lot of the offset companies have complained about how difficult it is, but that's a good thing, because it means that you have to meet pretty stringent standards to be eligible for CORSIA. So, and that's a good thing, and I think we should work hard to make sure that we put continuous pressure on that, because my mantra on this is aviation is as good as its worst offset. So its worst offset has to be high quality, and the way we do that is through those rules at CORSIA. So I've got a question here actually, but I think this is probably more aimed at me, but I'll share it with you as well, Holly. What is your opinion about the A380 and its sustainability? Was it a mistake by Airbus to develop this aircraft, because its life seems to be at the end? Huge fuel consumption. And I think, yeah, I think it's worth, obviously British Airways, we have 12 A380s. I think it's just worth reflecting on why the aircraft was developed. It really was a hub-to-hub aircraft, and it was built to service, space-constrained airports where there are slot constraints, and therefore you need to maximise the amount of capacity per slot. And I think the aircraft has proven to be extremely successful in carrying out that mission, and it's certainly been great success for British Airways, if you think about where it's flying to. So Hong Kong and Singapore, typically, where those airports are incredibly constrained. It is a big aircraft, there's no question about that. And it's a very well engineered aircraft. The passengers absolutely love it. It's a very comfortable aircraft to fly in, and it's one of the quietest aircraft. And I think in terms of, it does relatively burn reasonable amount of fuel, but I think you have to wait. The way I would look at the A380 is it often will replace two flights. So the configuration of the British Airways A380s is 467 seats. So we would need two wide bodies to match that capacity. So in that sense, it does help save CO2 emissions. Yeah. So I don't know, Holly, if you had any thoughts on the A380 or.
I don't think I could add anything to what you've said, Jonathan. And I certainly wouldn't assume to comment on Airbus's sort of investment strategy. So yeah, I think your response was incredibly helpful.
No problem, no problem. We have a question on hydrogen. Are you considering hydrogen in solid form for transport? I can maybe say something there, Holly, if you wanted me to, and then I think we're looking at it. I think hydrogen, we see it as a really strong potential alternative fuel, but it will need to be stored cryogenically to get that volume, so it will need to be in liquid form. I don't think we've thought about it specifically in solid form, but you know, we can certainly take that away and look at that more closely, but certainly in liquid form. I don't know, Holly, if you had any thing you wanted to add on that.
Thanks, Jonathan. No, I have to say that in the conversation I've been doing with the industry in respect of hydrogen, we've been talking about the use of hydrogen in fuel cells, either in liquid or gaseous form, or hydrogen as a liquid combustible fuel without fuel cell. So hydrogen in a solid form isn't actually something that I've ever heard referenced before. And apologies if that's naivety on my part, but again, welcome a follow-up if colleagues here think that that's something that has real potential, and if it's a gap in my knowledge, I'd welcome help in filling it.
I'm with you, Holly. I haven't come across either, so maybe that's something we will take away and have a look at and see if we can respond separately. I think we're up to the final question now, and appropriately, it's about the Jet Zero Council. The Jet Zero Council was launched to much fanfare by the government. Is there consideration to tell the wider public what it is doing?
Thanks. I welcome this question, actually. So Jet Zero Council, yep, it was launched about 18 months ago. We're just warming up to hold the fourth of the sort of plenary council meetings. Jonathan will no doubt comment on the fact that we've had a number of subgroup meetings for the Jet Zero Council in respect of sustainable aviation fuels. Very much welcome the support that group provided in terms of our developing our SAF mandate consultation, and indeed, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of our work for providing sustainable aviation fuels at COP26. However, I very much agree with the sentiment that there is more we can do to promote the work of the Jet Zero Council and be sort of transparent and open about what we are doing and what it's considering and how it's making a difference. I accept that sort of question, or perhaps indeed criticism, whether it's meant that way, who knows, but I accept that, and I think that's a challenge for us in the new year in terms of really thinking about how we can promote the work. There is a huge amount going on. We're trying to do a bit more in terms of, our website and publishing the minutes. We're thinking about whether there's a LinkedIn group that we can expand to include more members of the industry. We're thinking about whether there's briefing sessions that we can hold, which is kind of thinking Jet Zero Council, who are we, what we're about, with Emma Gilthorpe, who many of you will know is the CEO of the Jet Zero Council, and I know she's keen to promote it as well. So I think what I would say is there is a huge amount going on. I accept that we could do more to amplify and be sort of transparent about that work, and it's something that I am certainly thinking about and hope we can build on into 2023. Again, Jonathan, mindful that you're really close on the Jet Zero Council as well, so would welcome your reflections on that.
Yeah, no, no, thank you, Holly. We found it an extremely positive experience. I mean, it's I think it's accelerated basically our understanding and also our ability to input sort of industry's views on appropriate policy, particularly on the sustainable aviation fuel side, in a very effective manner. And I think when we look at the outcome, I mean, it's effectively within a 12-month period, successfully launched two really significant consultations, the Jet Zero consultation and the SAF mandate consultation. My sense is that would have taken a lot longer without the Jet Zero Council. So no, very supportive of the initiative, and also very pleased with the level of engagement. And you say on the SAF, the 4 delivery groups that we have there, we have over 40 members on each of those, and we've now run over 20 workshops across those different working groups. So the level of engagement and input has been great, and I think that can only help us in sort of going forward, developing the right policies to achieve all the aims that we want, which is accelerating sort of low carbon solutions for aviation. So no, overall very positive.
Thanks, Jonathan. And I think I would just sort of say, you know, just thinking about part of what we've said in our Jet Zero consultation, which is that we really recognise that, you know, working in partnership and collaborating is hugely important. Government can't solve this on its own, neither can industry. So the council is intended to be the key forum for collaboration and partnership, but it isn't the only forum. You know, we have many other avenues through which we collaborate and work with industry, but not just industry as well, our NGOs, members of the public and various others. So it isn't the only forum, but it's an important one, as you say. It's kind of one of our, I guess, sort of headline initiatives. And yeah, I really welcome Jonathan's reflections on how positive it's going. But as with everything, you know, there's always room for improvement. And I'm sure if Emma was here, she would agree with that as well.
Thank you, Holly. And I think one of the signs of success, I think, is that the rest of the world are now asking us lots of questions about how do we create our own Jet Zero Council. That's always always a good sign. Great. Well, thank you very much, Holly. That's been fantastic. And yeah, and thank you for taking time. That's at this incredibly busy time for you. It's really exciting for the UK to be hosting the COP. And you know, we wish you and everybody greater success, because as we all believe, it's going to be a fantastic springboard to help the ICAO General Assembly and accelerate a low carbon aviation industry. And I will have to, and I see William has just put up this picture, so I will mention forgive me, the BA Better World A320 aircraft. So this is an aircraft that was launched on September the 7th. This is the new BA sustainability strategy. Lots of details on the BA website. But this aircraft will be dedicated on all the Heathrow, Glasgow flights during the COP, and we will be flying it on 100% equivalent SAF for those 2 weeks. So we have 140 flights from Heathrow, Gatwick and London City to the Glasgow airport. So all of those flights will be running on the equivalent of 100% SAF. And really the purpose of that is to demonstrate that we have a solution and a technology that is available today. So just to sort of help create that strong impression that there is an option for us. So Holly, thank you very much. Much appreciated. And all the very best for the COP.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you very much for having me and for giving me the opportunity to speak. Thanks for all the questions and the engagement. I really appreciate it. And just, you know, thank you again for everyone here who is working on aviation decarbonisation and creating a sustainable future for the aviation industry. It's my sort of pleasure to work with you all. And please do be you want to pick up on that we've discussed, or indeed that we haven't discussed, always welcome that collaboration and that discussion. Yeah, so thank you very much again, and I'm sure I will speak with many of you soon.
Great. I think now I hand over back to William, who will finish off with maybe some comments about upcoming branch events.
Thank you, Jonathan. So we will be running our upcoming events on next month, which you will receive email invitation in due course. Before we finish, just like to remind you that we do have social media channels on Twitter, Facebook group, LinkedIn group, and also most importantly, this recording will be released on our YouTube and podcast channel in due course. So if you just search RAeS Heathrow branch on the above channels, or to visit our website aerosociety.com/Heathrow to find more information about our upcoming events and to engage with us. So thank you very much for attending today's event, and thank you, Jonathan, for hosting it, and thank you, Holly, to give us a fascinating topic, and it's a certainly very timely topic at the present moment in time. So thank you for joining us today. Wish you a very good health and goodbye.